You just have to remember these meals that you're going out to with the donor, they're not for you. It's not about pleasing yourself. It's not about getting the thing that you want to eat and enjoy the most. It's about handling yourself in a way that represents your organization well, and honors the donor. I mean, really, everything in fundraising, yeah, it is about serving the people that you're trying to benefit. It's, if you're in higher ed, it's about trying to serve the students, right? But after that, it's about serving your donors. It's about doing right by them, giving them a good experience. Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Well, good morning. Here we are in July. I've just gotten back from a week at the lake with my family, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. And it's really been a great week. I mean, we've been able to put out some great shows on the podcast. We are celebrating over 1,000 downloads now. We're enjoying those downloads from across the world. We're in 6 continents. I never really thought we'd get there. So a big thank you to all of our listeners, especially those of you, that are in Asia and Europe and Australia. That's really cool. I've got some lines out. I'm trying to actually get someone to do a download while they're in Antarctica, but we'll see if that happens or not. So fingers crossed. And if you're out there, I don't actually know you personally, but thank you. Anyway, so good things are happening with the podcast, and like I said, I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of things after kind of a lazy week. As I was thinking about things that might be helpful for our listeners, though, there's a lot of things that you learn in fundraising that nobody's going to teach you in a course. Nobody's going to teach you in, any sort of training thing that would happen officially. A lot of these things are things that you just learn by doing, by practicing. I'll never forget, and most of them are kind of embarrassing things or silly things, right? I'll never forget one of my very first donor calls. Was with an old colleague named Rachel. Rachel was a director of development at the dental school when I was a development officer, an entry-level development officer there. And I was just being trained on how to meet with dentists, how to talk with dentists about the school. And I remember going with her and just being totally overwhelmed with all the information that she knew about the school and how well she interacted with people. And it was just so intimidating because I thought, man, I'm never going to be able to speak as knowledgeably about the dental school as she's doing presently. And those were all helpful things to see as a new fundraiser, because it helped me understand the level of learning that really goes into being a successful major gift officer. What I mean is this is if you're going to be a major gift officer representing an organization, especially if it has to do with science or education or something along those lines, you've got to really do your homework. If you're talking about science, like if you're representing a place that does dentistry or pharmacy or something along those lines, you really need to become kind of a student of that profession and a student of those sciences. And I'm not saying take a class, though you could. I mean, I think I audited a course at one point just to try and understand the profession better. But if you're going to people that have an interest in those fields who are experts in those fields themselves, and you can't use the terminology and you can't use the language that they use, if you can't sound as if and understand the profession or the industry or the areas of concern, you're not going to have credibility. I'm proud to say in both of my science-based jobs, by the time I was done at each of those roles, I was mistaken both for a dentist and a pharmacist, simply because I learned the language and I understood it, and I could talk about the smell of monomer in the morning in a dental lab. I could talk about, you know, pharmacogenomics. I could talk about all the different sorts of things that were going on in the pharmacy world. Yeah, knowing how to say the words is also helpful. I think one of the harder words for me to get down, at least initially, was pharmacognosy. That is looking for new drugs using plants and natural products, that sort of thing. So anyway, all I'm saying is that particular trip with Rachel that day, and I feel like we went to it was someplace northeast Ohio, might have been Massillon, but we went and I got to see her in action. And again, I realized I needed to really study if I was going to be effective as a fundraiser. The other thing that I learned, and this is one of the funny things, I learned that if you're eating with a donor, don't order the pasta with a runny sauce on it. Just don't do that. So I go there, I'm with her, and I order spaghetti, and it's spaghetti with oil and garlic on it. Another mistake. Super garlicky sort of stuff, super oniony. You probably want to avoid that. And so I get this big pile of spaghetti covered with olive oil and garlic. And I'm sitting there twirling it, and the the oil is going all over my shirt because that's just what oil does when you twirl it. And anyway, it was pretty embarrassing because I left that meeting with splotches of oil all over my fancy dress shirt and my tie. Again, things that you aren't necessarily going to be taught when you're in fundraising school or taking a course from at the Eli Lilly school or whatever you're learning there. You really want to think carefully about what you eat. I always try very hard to not order anything that requires me to use my fingers too much. You're not going to order wings, because you imagine tearing into a wing, getting sauce all over your face and your hands at a business meeting, and you're sitting there and you're licking your fingers, and the meeting's over, and you go to shake his hand, and like you've just been licking your fingers. That isn't what you want, right? I highly recommend if you're going out with someone to eat, you know, get a salad. Get a salad with a nice thick dressing on it, ranches, fine, something like that, where it's not going to spray all over the place. You're not going to get your fingers messy. And ask for no onions, right? So that's what I almost always do is I order a salad with a protein on it. And I don't even like to order sandwiches because again, you're using your fingers. Now, I'll say this: if you have to order a sandwich, let's say you meet them at a sandwich place, which I would avoid, right? Really want to go for something where you've seen the menu and you know what's on it. I got to do some homework there. Cut your sandwich in half first, and the reason is over time a sandwich bun degrades, and your fingers are in that sandwich bun, and it's interacting with the mayo or whatever sauce is on there, and the next thing you know, you've got a mushy mess, and again, your hands are a wreck. You just have to remember these meals that you're going out to with the donor, they're not for you. It's not about pleasing yourself. It's not about getting the thing that you want to eat and enjoy the most. It's about handling yourself in a way that represents your organization well, and honors the donor. I mean, really, everything in fundraising, yeah, it is about serving the people that you're trying to benefit. It's if you're in higher ed, it's about trying to serve the students, right? But after that, it's about serving your donors. It's about doing right by them, giving them a good experience. And no donor wants to watch you, dig into a T-bone with your hands in your face, and you getting, pieces of beef stuck in your. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze their challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show. In between your teeth, that isn't a way to honor a donor, right? So use really good manners. Keep your hands clean. Keep your face clean. Don't eat saucy things, right? Now, here's another thing about eating and drinking. Some of us, uh, are quick drinkers. You put a glass of water in front of me, I'm probably going to down that pretty quickly. If we're sitting together and we're having iced tea, I might have 3 glasses of iced tea for every one you drink. I don't know why that is. It's just that's what I do. You got to watch yourself with that sort of thing. It can get you in a lot of trouble. Certainly, if it's beer, like you don't want to over imbibe with a donor, right? It would not be a good look for you to, get drunk with a donor. You shouldn't do that professionally, right? We're on the clock. We're working hard, and those of us that are in the fundraising business, drinking is fair game oftentimes because you might have a glass of wine with a nice dinner or something like that. But at the same time, you've got to watch yourself because again, it isn't about you and meeting your needs or desires, right? It's about serving your donor. And you don't want your donor to get sloshed either. I mean, if they're going to sign a gift agreement, they need to do that when they're sober, right? To do something else would be unethical, right? And that isn't what we want to be about as we develop major gift mastery. But it's not just over imbibing in terms of intoxication that's the problem. It's frankly having to pee. And the older you get, at least as a guy, and I realize most fundraisers are women, but at least as a guy, as you approach a certain age, you find yourself having to use a restroom a lot more frequently. One of my best donors once, he was a very successful pharmaceutical executive. He said to me, he said, Tom, once you get past 50, you never walk past a bathroom, and it's because of that experience. But I'll tell you a story, and this is a little embarrassing, but it really happened. So I'm out with my dean and out with a donor, and her partner, and they wanted to take us to their favorite spot on the beach to have some drinks, and so we're hoping to cultivate a large gift, and so we go, and of course they want to drive, and we're not going to turn them down for that. So we're going out there, and we have a beer, like we're not drinking too much, but I also have an iced tea, and so I'm sitting there drinking iced teas, and it's time to leave, and they want to show us their hometown, and they want to drive us around and show us everything and stuff, and this is right around rush hour, and traffic's bad, and all of a sudden, I realize I need to pee, and I'm like, okay, I can make it. I can hold out, and it's getting worse and worse, and I just don't know what to do because it's not typically the sort of thing you want to bring up to a donor. And my dean is sitting right next to me, and I'm feeling worse and worse, and I'm starting to panic. I'm starting to wonder, oh my gosh, what will it mean for my career if I wet my pants in a donor's vehicle? This could be really bad in front of my dean, right? Who's, one of my bosses. And, finally it just got to a point where I had to ask her to pull over near a mall, at a mall where I could do my business there. And it was all fine. It was not an issue, not a problem. The donor still liked us, and everybody understood, and it just wasn't an issue at all. But to be in that moment of walking through the ramifications of wetting your pants during a business meeting, that's not where you want to be. So all that being said, if you find yourself in a place where they're just bringing you iced teas or bringing you waters or whatever the beverage is, if you are a nervous drinker, if you're a fast drinker, you really need to be thoughtful about tempering your behavior. Now, this is another reason, and I brought this up before, but now I will say that I have conducted thousands of donor calls in restaurants. And that's fine. If you have to do that, you have to do that. And some people, some business people, they want to get together for coffee. They want to get together for breakfast or lunch or what have you. And if that's the culture of the particular constituency you're working with, then you're just going to have to figure out a way to make that work. And I've got tips for that too. But if you can avoid meeting in a restaurant, that would be really, really to your advantage. If you think about this, if you're at even at like a Bob Evans or some other, casual kind of cheap sit down restaurant or diner, and believe it or not, I mean, a lot of donors are just as happy to meet at places like that. I've discussed all sorts of 6-figure gifts in Bob Evans restaurants with donors, but simply because in their neighborhood that was one of the nicer restaurants, But but regardless, you've got waiters and waitresses, stopping by your table all the time. If they're any good, they're always coming by, or they're coming by to ask you, what would you like to eat? Would you like some dessert? What all those sorts of questions that they're supposed to ask you, right? Well, I can tell you invariably they end up coming at just the wrong moment. You ask some important question, you start the gift discussion, or you ask for permission to start, to talk about a gift down the road. That's when your server's going to show up, right? Now, one guy I knew, name was Jason, and he's in a different field now, but brilliant fundraiser. He came up with this way of managing that blew my mind. It was so wise, so insightful. And Jason, if you're out there, thank you for this tip. I'm about to share it with lots of people. He would get to the restaurant early, which I always recommend, by the way. And while he would find out who his server was, and he would have a private conversation with his server. And he would tell the server that the server needed to watch his place setting very carefully. And that if his knife was at a 45-degree angle on the table, rather than being parallel with his fork and spoon, that the server was not to come to the table. And that every time the server violated that, he was going to subtract a portion of the tip. So that was a beautiful way to manage that. And I highly recommend and endorse that. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.